My wife cheated with our estate lawyer behind my back. Then she forged my signature to steal $250, $0 of our inheritance. And now she's trying to accuse me of fraud to cover her tracks. I never thought I'd be the guy writing about how my wife, Lisa, basically betrayed me in every way possible. You know those moments where everything shifts in an instant? Yeah, that's how it started. One day, I was sitting in my office, just reviewing some documents when I noticed something weird. A series of strange charges on our joint account, all linked to an estate lawyer I'd never heard of. At first, I thought maybe I'd missed something, but then I realized Lisa had been talking to this guy behind my back for months. Turns out, she'd been cheating on me with him and I had no idea. It all came crashing down fast. I'd always trusted her, or so I thought. We had a decent life, me working as a project manager, her running her small boutique. We weren't perfect, but I believed in us. I'd seen her flirt a few times, but she'd always brush it off, calling it harmless fun, or saying I was overly jealous. But then I found the emails, the texts, the late-night calls. She was deep into an affair and I was just blind to it. The first sign that something was seriously wrong was when I caught her sneaking her phone into the bathroom, trying to hide a message from the lawyer. I remember asking her what she was doing, and she shot me a look, cold, defensive, like I was the one invading her privacy. She told me she was just talking about some legal stuff, that I was paranoid. But her voice was shaky and her eyes didn't match her words. That's when I started digging. I knew I had to find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. One night I followed her to a fancy hotel downtown. I parked across the street, watching her walk in with that smirk on her face, the kind of smirk that says she's got a secret. I waited until she went inside, then I snuck around, trying to get a glimpse. That's when I saw her with the lawyer, kissing, touching, talking in that intimate way that only people who are hiding something do. I felt my stomach drop. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with a man I trusted to handle our legal affairs. It was like my world was shattering in real time. I didn't confront her that night. I just went home, my mind racing. I kept thinking about all the signs I'd ignored, the little things, her avoiding my gaze, canceling dates, the weird excuses she'd give when I asked about her late nights. But what really pushed me over the edge was realizing she'd been lying about everything. She told me she was working late, going to yoga, even visiting her sister. Meanwhile, she was out with this lawyer, probably screwing him on our dime. It made me furious. How could she betray me like this? How could she lie so easily? I felt like I was losing my mind, and that's when I knew I had to act. The next day, I started digging into the bank statements more closely. I found out she'd been funneling money into accounts I didn't recognize, money that was supposed to be part of our inheritance. Turns out, she'd been plotting to steal from us, probably with the lawyer's help. I also discovered she'd forged my signature on some documents, transferring $250,000 from our estate. That's when I realized this wasn't just about infidelity, it was about her trying to screw me over completely. I felt sick. How much more had she taken? What else was she hiding? I confronted her that evening. I laid everything out on the table, the emails, the bank statements, the forged signatures. Her face twisted in anger, denial, then outright lies. She told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. She said I was crazy to think she'd do something so stupid, and that I was just jealous because she was more successful than me. She even had the nerve to call me insecure, saying I was ruining what we had. But I saw right through her. Her tone, her lies, they all reeked of guilt. Still, she kept spinning her stories, trying to manipulate me, to make me doubt what I knew was the truth. That's when I felt the full weight of it all: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I had trusted her with everything, and she'd been screwing around behind my back while secretly plotting to steal our money. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't breathe. I was furious that she'd call me insecure, that she'd lie about everything, even try to pin the blame on me. All I could think about was how much I'd been played, how I'd been blind for so long. The worst part was knowing she'd lie her way out of it, that she'd try to convince everyone she was innocent, even as she was caught red-handed. I knew I had to decide what to do next, but one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not without a fight. After I laid everything out on the table, those emails, the forged documents, the bank statements, I expected her to break down, to finally admit what she'd done. Instead, Lisa's reaction was pure defiance. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk and started spinning her usual lies. "You're crazy," she snapped. "You always think the worst. I don't know what you're talking about." Her voice was sharp, almost mocking. I could see the flicker of panic behind her eyes, but she masked it with that condescending attitude, like I was the one losing my mind. She insisted she was innocent, that I was just jealous of her success, that she'd never cheat on me, let alone steal from our future. She threw in the classic line, "You're just insecure because I'm more ambitious than you." That right there made my blood boil. How dare she call me insecure when she was the one sneaking around behind my back? I could see her trying to turn everything around, trying to make me doubt myself. It was classic gaslighting, and I felt the surge of rage boil up again. Pressed her harder. "How do you explain the money transferring out of our accounts, the forged signatures, the lawyer you've been sneaking around with?" Her face went pale for a second, then she recovered with that bitchy sneer. "You're just paranoid. You always jump to conclusions. I don't know what kind of conspiracy you're trying to spin, but I haven't done anything wrong." She even had the nerve to accuse me of being controlling, of not trusting her, as if she hadn't been caught red-handed. The audacity. That's when the emotional flood hit me. I felt a mixture of shock, anger, and heartbreak all at once. How could she do this to me? I had loved her, trusted her. We'd been through so much together, our wedding, the plans for the future, the little things that made us a team. And now I was sitting here realizing she'd been lying, cheating, and stealing behind my back. The betrayal cut so deep I could hardly breathe. It was like someone had taken a knife and twisted it slowly. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? How could I have been so blind? And yet here I was, facing the cold truth. Her accusations took a darker turn. She started claiming I was abusive, that I was trying to control her, that I was jealous and insecure. She said I was just angry because she'd been successful, that I was jealous of her accomplishments. That was her go-to line, blame the victim. It was her way of trying to make me doubt my own feelings, to make me look like the bad guy. But I knew the truth. I knew she was lying, spinning stories to cover her own ass. I felt the weight of it all crushing me. The love I'd had for her was slowly turning into disgust. I was angry at myself for trusting her so blindly, angry at her for betraying everything we'd built. But mostly, I was furious at her for trying to manipulate me, to gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one. I wanted to scream, to shout, to do something, anything, to make her see how much she'd hurt me. But I also knew I needed to keep my cool, to be strategic. That night, I didn't sleep much. My mind kept racing over every detail. The calls, the emails, the forged signatures, the money gone. I realized she'd been planning this for a while, probably since the day she met the lawyer. She'd been laying the groundwork, sneaking around, lying to my face while pretending everything was fine. I kept asking myself how I hadn't seen it sooner, how I'd been so blind to her true nature. I felt betrayed, not just by her actions, but by the person I thought I knew. The next morning, I decided I had to gather more evidence before I confronted her again. I contacted the lawyer, who was surprisingly cooperative when I explained I suspected fraud. Turns out, Lisa had forged my signature on some documents that transferred $250,000 out of our estate, money we'd been counting on for our retirement, for our future. I couldn't believe it. She planned this entire thing, trying to steal our inheritance right under my nose. The thought made me sick. I also found out she'd been secretly funneling money into accounts that I didn't even know existed. She was trying to hide her tracks, cover her ass. And all the while she was telling me she was working late or going out with friends. That's when it hit me. She'd been lying about everything. The woman I loved, the woman I married, she'd been playing me from the start. I felt the rage boil up again. How dare she? How could she think she could get away with this? I was furious, but I also felt a strange numbness creeping in. The kind that comes after realizing someone you trusted has been lying to your face for months. I knew I had to decide what to do next, whether to fight for my marriage or cut her loose for good. But one thing was clear: I was not going to let her walk away with my money, my life savings, or my dignity. I was going to make her pay one way or another. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Lisa was a master manipulator. She'd spun her web around me so carefully, I didn't see the signs until everything was laid bare. That day, I sat down and made a list, proof of her lies, her manipulations, her outright theft. It was like building a case against someone I thought I knew. The worst part, I realized she'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. All the late nights, the secret calls, the fake smiles, all of it was part of her scheme to take everything from me. I remember the moment I decided I couldn't stay silent. I called her out in the kitchen that evening after I'd been on the phone with our lawyer. I told her I knew everything. Her face twisted into a sneer like she was amused by her own deception. "You're just paranoid," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You always jump to conclusions. You're insecure, that's all." That's when I saw how deep her lies went. She was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt my own perceptions. I pressed her harder, determined to get her to admit the truth. "Lisa, I have the bank statements, the forged signatures, the emails. I know about the money you transferred out of our accounts. I know you've been lying to me this entire time." Her eyes flickered, but she kept her composure, the same bitchy smirk plastered on her face. "You're imagining things," she said, almost mockingly. "You're just jealous because I'm more successful than you. That's why you're so paranoid." That comment hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd always believed in us, in what we were building. But her words revealed the truth. She saw me as an obstacle, an insecure guy who couldn't handle her success. I was furious, but I also felt a deep sadness. How could the woman I loved think so little of me? How could she lie, cheat, and steal from us, then turn around and call me insecure? It was like she was trying to rewrite history to make herself the victim. But I knew better. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her and demand she tell me everything. But instead, I stayed calm because I knew that's what she wanted, me to lose control, to make mistakes. I had to be smart. I told her I was going to take legal action, that I'd report her for fraud and theft. Her eyes widened for a second, then she recovered with her usual bitchy attitude. "Go ahead," she spat. "You'll just ruin everything. You're too emotional, too insecure to handle this like an adult." That's when I realized she was trying to paint me as the villain, as the crazy, jealous husband. That night, I sat alone in my office, staring at the evidence I'd collected. I felt a mix of rage, disappointment, and heartbreak. I'd trusted her with everything, our future, our dreams, my love, and she'd thrown it all away for a quick score. I kept replaying her lies in my head, trying to understand how she could be so cold, so calculating. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I wondered how she could look herself in the mirror after all she'd done. Did she feel guilty? Did she even care? The next day, I called a private investigator. I needed to know. If there was more she hadn't told me, more she was hiding. It turned out she'd been meeting with the lawyer at least twice a week, sometimes more. They'd been planning this, I was sure of it. I also found out she opened new bank accounts in my name, forged my signature on legal documents, and arranged to transfer more money. I could feel my blood boiling. She'd been scheming behind my back for months, and I hadn't seen it coming. I was starting to realize that Lisa wasn't just cheating on me. She was actively trying to destroy me financially and emotionally. The betrayal was so profound, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd ever trust anyone again. I was angry at myself for not noticing sooner, for not seeing the signs. But mostly, I was furious at her for playing me so convincingly, for making me feel like I was going crazy when I knew the truth. I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to fight back, legally and emotionally. I knew I couldn't just walk away from this without consequences. That afternoon, I sat down with my lawyer to plan my next move. We discussed how to freeze her accounts, recover the stolen money, and file charges for forgery and fraud. I also decided I'd confront her one last time, this time with all the evidence laid out. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be a pushover, that I was serious about protecting what was mine. But even as I planned my revenge, I felt the weight of everything she'd done to us. The trust I'd lost, the love that had turned into bitter resentment, it all haunted me. I knew this was only the beginning. She lied, cheated, and stolen from me, and I wasn't going to let her walk away clean. I was determined to make her pay, not just financially but emotionally. She wanted to ruin me, but I was going to make sure she paid for every single lie and betrayal. It was time to fight back, and I was done playing nice. The confrontation I had planned was intense. I gathered all the evidence, printouts of the emails, the forged signatures, the bank statements, and laid them out on the dining table. I wanted her to see everything at once, to understand that I wasn't messing around. Lisa was sitting across from me, her usual bitchy smirk replaced with a flicker of panic. She tried to brush it off, acting like I was overreacting, like this was all some big misunderstanding. But her voice was trembling when she everything. "You're just making stuff up," she said, trying to sound confident, but her eyes kept darting around. "You're paranoid, and honestly, you're just jealous. You want to control me, that's all." She looked at me with that same condescending look, like I was a fool for not trusting her. I felt my blood boil. How could she be so brazen? How could she lie so convincingly? I knew I had her cornered, but I also knew this wasn't over yet. I told her, "Look, Lisa, I've had enough. I know about the affair, I know about the theft. You've been lying to me for months, and I've got the proof. The money you stole, our inheritance gone. The signatures forged, our estate compromised. How do you plan to explain this?" Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started spinning her usual bullshit, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that I was jealous of her success, that I was just insecure. She even said I was controlling, which was laughable considering I'd been nothing but supportive until now. But I didn't buy her lies anymore. I was furious, not just because of what she'd done, but because she was trying to manipulate me into doubting myself. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I was going to press charges, and that I was taking back what was ours. Her reaction was a mixture of anger and disbelief, but she still refused to admit fault. Instead, she accused me of being a terrible husband, said I was emotionally abusive, and claimed I was trying to sabotage her career. It was a classic move: shift the blame, play the victim. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my head: the betrayal, her lies, her sneering face. I felt betrayed on every level, emotionally, financially, and psychologically. I'd loved her, trusted her, and she'd been planning this entire scam behind my back. The worst part: I kept asking myself what I could have done differently. Had I missed the signs? Was I blind? I realized that I'd been so focused on building a life with her that I hadn't seen the cracks forming beneath the surface. Now I was left picking up the pieces. The next morning, I met with a forensic accountant and our lawyer to figure out how to recover the stolen money. It was a complicated process. She'd moved funds into multiple accounts, forged documents, and tried to cover her tracks. But we had enough proof to freeze her assets and start legal proceedings. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I was finally taking action. Anger that she'd tried to destroy everything we'd built. I also decided I needed to protect myself from any further damage, so I changed all my passwords, closed joint accounts, and started the process of securing my personal assets. Meanwhile, Lisa was trying to spin her own version of events. She claimed I was the real villain, that I'd been emotionally abusive and controlling, that she'd only done what she did because she was trapped in a marriage she no longer wanted. I couldn't believe the audacity. She was trying to turn the tables on me, to make me look like the bad guy while she was the victim. It was classic gaslighting, but I refused to buy into it anymore. I saw her for what she was: a manipulative, selfish woman who'd been willing to destroy us for her own gain. The most frustrating part was how she kept insisting she was innocent, even as I had all the evidence. She'd lie about her meetings with the lawyer, deny she forged my signature, then try to turn it around and say I was the one doing illegal stuff. I was furious at her audacity. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions, to feel the weight of betrayal she'd inflicted on me. I realized that this wasn't just about money. It was about respect, trust, and the life we tried to build. And she'd thrown it all away because she thought she could get away with it. As the days went on, I started to feel a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't fix what was broken, but I could rebuild my life. I decided to move forward, to cut all ties with her financially and emotionally. I filed for divorce, and I made it clear I was determined to get every penny back that she'd stolen. I also started therapy to deal with the emotional fallout. It was hard, but I knew I had to do it because I couldn't let her win. Not like this. Not after everything she'd done. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot. About trust, about the importance of paying attention to the signs, and about standing up for myself. I also learned that some people are capable of incredible betrayal, and the only way to protect yourself is to be vigilant and assertive. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone in a similar situation, it would be this. Don't ignore the red flags. And when you find out someone you love has betrayed you on this level, don't hesitate to fight for what's rightfully yours. Because in the end, nobody owes you more than your own integrity. And sometimes, you have to take it back yourself. The legal battle dragged on longer than I expected, but I knew I had to see it through. Every day I was dealing with new documents, more lies uncovered, and the mounting frustration of watching her try to manipulate the system. Lisa was still trying to paint herself as the victim, claiming I was controlling and emotionally abusive. She even had her lawyer send some strange, convoluted letters accusing me of fraud and trying to derail the proceedings. Honestly, I just wanted it all to be over. I'd never felt so betrayed and humiliated in my life. What really pushed me to the edge was when I found out she'd been secretly contacting old friends and family, trying to spin her version of the story. How I was a jealous, abusive husband who'd driven her to do these stupid things. She was desperately trying to gather support, to make it look like I was the bad guy. But I had enough evidence now, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate anyone anymore. I was done being the victim in her game. One day, I had a meeting with a forensic accountant, and he confirmed what I'd suspected. She'd moved a significant portion of our inheritance into offshore accounts, trying to hide the money. It was a well-planned scheme, and she'd been working with the lawyer to cover her tracks. That was the breaking point. I knew I had to get a court order to freeze her assets and start recovering what was stolen. It was a complicated process. But I was determined. I couldn't let her get away with it, not after everything. Meanwhile, I started to realize how much this ordeal had changed me. I'd always been trusting, maybe even a little naive, but now I was hardened. I'd gone from the guy who believed in happily ever after to someone who knew the depths of betrayal. Still, I refused to let her define me. I was taking control of my life, piece by piece. I knew I'd need time to heal, but I also knew I'd come out of this stronger. I was done being a victim. The divorce was finalized a few months later. It was a messy process, full of legal battles and bitter arguments. Lisa tried every trick in the book, trying to claim she deserved more, that I was the one at fault. But I had the evidence and I was relentless. I fought for every penny she'd stolen, and I made sure she paid for her lies. The judge finally ordered her to pay restitution, and I received most of what was stolen back. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was a start. In the aftermath, I felt an odd mix of relief and emptiness. The anger that had fueled me for months started to fade, replaced by a quiet sadness. I'd lost my trust, my sense of security, and a part of my future with Lisa. But I also gained clarity. I realized how important it was to be vigilant, to trust but verify, and to never ignore the signs of betrayal. I learned that some people will go to incredible lengths to hurt you, and the only way to protect yourself is to be prepared. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the warning signs sooner, but I also know I can't change the past. All I can do now is move forward. I've started therapy, worked on rebuilding my confidence, and begun to open up to new people again. It's been a long road, but I feel like I'm finally getting my life back. To anyone reading this, I want you to understand that betrayal cuts deep, but you don't have to let it destroy you. Sometimes the only way to heal is to confront the truth head-on, fight for what's rightfully yours, and refuse to be a victim. Trust your instincts, pay attention to the red flags, and never let someone's lies define your worth. The road to recovery won't be easy, but it's worth it. Because in the end, you owe it to yourself to reclaim your life, no matter how much it hurts. Now that everything is settled, I spend a lot of time reflecting on what I've been through. Honestly, I never thought I would come out of this mess with any kind of peace. The betrayal was so deep, so calculated, it felt like my entire world had been shattered. But I've learned some hard truths along the way. Trust is fragile and people can surprise you in the worst ways. I used to believe in honesty and loyalty, but now I know better. You have to protect yourself, be vigilant, and never ignore those small warning signs that something's off. One thing I realize is how much this experience has changed me. I used to be someone who took things at face value, who believed in the best of people. Now I'm more cautious, more guarded, but I also have a newfound strength. I've learned to stand up for myself, to fight for what's mine, and to never let anyone manipulate or deceive me again. It's a lonely lesson, but one that's made me more resilient. I also see the importance of boundaries. Lisa's betrayal showed me how easy it is for someone close to you to cross lines you never thought possible. I've become more aware of my own limits and more committed to protecting my emotional and financial well-being. I've also realized that sometimes walking away is the best option. Not every relationship is salvageable, especially when trust is broken on such a fundamental level. Going forward, I'm focused on rebuilding my life, slowly but surely. I've started dating again cautiously. I'm more selective, more aware of what I want and what I need from a partner. I don't rush into anything. I take my time to rebuild that trust within myself first. I've also become more involved in my community and my passions. I want to surround myself with genuine people who value honesty and integrity. The past has taught me that those qualities are everything. To anyone out there who might be going through something similar, I want you to know that betrayal doesn't have to define your future. Yes, it hurts like hell, and yes, it feels like the end of the world, but it's also an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become stronger. Don't let someone's lies and manipulations rob you of your happiness. Take control, face the truth, and remember that you're worth more than someone who would betray you for their own gain. In the end, I'm grateful for what I've learned, even if it's been the hardest lesson of my life. I now know that I can survive the worst, that I can pick myself up and move on. And I also know that real trust must be earned, not given blindly. My story isn't just about betrayal. It's about resilience, about reclaiming my life from the ashes of deception. And I hope that somehow my experience can serve as a warning or a lesson to others. Because no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way back to the light. You just have to find it, and never let anyone take that away from you.